So my journey from mainstream music to Christian music is kind of unusual. I wanted in mainstream because of all the things that came with it, with the fame and the fortune, and that was my main motivation for everything. And The Voice was kind of just a way to accelerate that. And it worked because I was in the room with all the right people, I was touring in all the right places, but for some reason I was being handed empty promises, and I wasn't able to actually take my career to the next step, even though it looked like that's where it was going and there's no way it wouldn't go. I did all the right things that you're supposed to do, but I just felt God kept shutting doors, and I didn't know why. So it really affected my mental health. I became depressed. I got a lot of anxiety, and I was angry and bitter, and it was affecting my life in a very negative way. So after I was shelved by a label, I was done. That was the end. I decided I was going to close the curtain on my music career and call it quits. A few months later, my wife was about 5 months pregnant when I suffered a health scare, and a handful of ER visits and anxiety attacks left and right. I was diagnosed with a rare disease called transverse myelitis. It's a disease that affects a part of the spinal cord in your body, and I was slowly becoming paralyzed, one limb at a time, until I was eventually in a wheelchair, and I couldn't walk at all. The condition that I was in put my wife into preterm labor from all the stress and anxiety that we were experiencing. We were sitting in the hospital, and sure enough, it was preterm, and the doctor said it's not okay. This can't happen. It's too early. She might not make it. I'm sitting in my chair, and I broke down to the lowest point I've ever felt myself in before, and I didn't really have anywhere else to turn. So I looked up and I started to pray, probably one of the more sincere prayers that I've ever prayed in my entire life. And I got real with God, and I was asking him, why is this happening to me? What, are my past sins, are they catching up with me? In that moment, I heard God to kind of tell me stop and just breathe for a second. And I did, and I stopped. In that moment, I was overcome with this sense of surrender. I just felt God was uplifting me and giving me power when I was powerless. And if there was one person who could give me that, it would be God, and that's exactly how I felt. I was at that moment where I was ready to give everything to God, everything that I had. I didn't know what that meant, because music for me was pretty much done, but it didn't matter to me. I wanted to give everything that I had to him, and I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, whether I would be able to be cured of this or not. And that's when I was filled with this overwhelming peace and this surrender, and I'd never felt that way before. Shortly after that prayer, the doctor came in and said, "We stopped preterm labor, baby's gonna be fine, so we'll send you home." I got up and I felt my foot on the ground for the first time in 3 months. I could feel, and I hadn't been able to feel for quite a while. So now, 3 years later, I'm about 99% healed, and I have 2 healthy kids. Since that time, I was trying to figure out what God had asked me to do and how I could serve his purpose, and by surrendering my life to him. And I did whatever I could. I tried my best to be a good husband, a good father, and I got plugged into my church a lot. I was just waiting for him to just tell me if this is what it was going to be, then that was okay with me. It wasn't until recently that I felt a calling to release some of my music that had been just kind of sitting in the archives for the last 3 years. So this time was a little different, and I said, okay, I'll release it, and it's yours at that point. I still have and will continue to have that mentality. Whether my music touches 1 million people or one person, it's God's plan unfolding in his own way, and I'm just a vessel for him. And the best part about it is I get to sit back and watch him do his work and watch him use me for that.